Okay, let me repeat the question. The question is very simple. And she said, how about you, Trish? How long have you been an entrepreneur? After she said that, I swear I felt something in my body, something that moved. It was kind of like this kind of like resistance. There is this movement in the body I felt yesterday that was like. I can't even explain it. And I stayed in that moment for a while and just really kind of sensing in my body what exactly I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. And now as I'm reflecting and as I'm talking out loud, I'm realizing what it is because it's something that I see often in coaches. Hi, friend. Welcome to another episode of Business Not as Usual. Today we talk about a pressing topic that most of us, if not all of us, experience on a daily basis, and that is imposter syndrome. We talk about why we feel this. We talk about how this feels in our body. We talk about 3 things that we can do right now for free in just a couple of minutes to overcome this feeling of not enough or not fit or feeling of pretentious, feeling of pretending, imposter syndrome, aka. And we also talk about the power of community. This episode will be quick, but I hope it will catalyze your own transformation so that you can continue guiding other people to their own transformation. So without further ado, let's get to it. Something happened yesterday that honestly caught me by surprise. I slept on it. I woke up this morning. It's still there. And I thought, oh, why don't I just come in here to reflect on it live with you? Because I'm sure I'm not the only person experiencing this. I'm certain there are more people, much more than I think. It's just that it's quite difficult to find, let's say, people who openly share about these experiences. And so, I thought, why don't I just do it here in this episode live without script, without agenda? So I'm just going to reflect on the significant thing that happened yesterday with you and invite you to reflect on it as well, because I have a feeling that you also in some way, shape, or form experience this, maybe not on a daily basis, but it comes because I never thought I would. I see it in many people, but I'm like, oh gosh, like I never thought I would be in that space. Let me give you a backstory so kind of you understand what's happening here and what the hell I'm talking about. Yesterday I had a online chat, an online call with someone who is joining the community that I am hosting in person in Madrid. So for those of you who know Lean In Network, so I am part of the Lean In Network and I am hosting a community in person in Madrid. Lean In Network is a global community that was founded by Sheryl Sandberg. She's the former CEO of Facebook. I actually have her book right here. It's called Lean In. And, she's all about women empowerment. I really like how she how she shared her experiences as, a mom and a wife in the workplace. And I was like, oh, yeah, I really loved it. And so I started, reading the book. And then in the book, I saw there's a Lean In network. And I was like, oh, and then I saw it was global. And I was like, cool. So yeah, in 2023, I became part of the Lean In Network, and I'm hosting my own circle in Madrid. And so women who are moving to Madrid or visiting Madrid for a while, or just want to connect with people in Spain in some way. Maybe they're part of other Lean-In networks and they come and they meet other like-minded women. So basically that's what this group is for. That's what this community is for. Supporting one another, women in the workplace, uplifting each other, encouraging each other, so on and so forth. So the call I had yesterday was for this circle, right? There was a lady, really, really nice girl. She's super cool, super interesting. She's arriving to Spain in a couple of months, and she's looking to, find community like all of us. I remember when I first moved to Spain, because my Spanish was so bad, I was like, oh, where's an English-speaking community here? And, there's a few, and that's one of the reasons why I started this Lean-In circle. But anyway, so much so for that. Where am I getting at? Okay, let me come back to my point here. So we had a conversation. It was really nice. I asked a little bit about her, and she told me some things about herself. Really, really interesting background. And she started to ask me about me, right? In a conversations, there's this question and answer. It was very casual. And then she asked a question that started this whole reflection. So she said, so tell me more about you, Trish. How long have you been an entrepreneur? Okay, let me repeat the question. The question is very simple. And she said, how about you, Trish? How long have you been an entrepreneur? After she said that, I swear, I felt something in my body, something that moved. It was kind of like a, what is the word even? This kind of like resistance. Like, I'm not even sure if it's resistant, but there is this movement in the body I felt yesterday that was like. I can't even explain it. I don't have language into what I felt yesterday, but I'm guessing, I'm assuming it's somewhere along the lines of resistance. I felt something like that. And I was like, interesting. So immediately my mind started processing, do I answer her question? Because I understand what she's asking me, right? Do I answer her question, or do I address what I'm feeling right now and share it with her? I'm like, So I said, I guess I went for the decision of the first one to just answer her question. So I said, well, I've had my online business, the business that I have now, in the pandemic. But in 2023, it started growing when I moved to Spain. And so I started my answer from there. I told her more about different things. And so I said, so it's been like 5 years with this online business. And so she started asking some more, and she's like, oh, wow, that's super cool. And so what were you doing before? And I said, well, before that, so before the pandemic, I had a travel agency. Well, as you know, when the pandemic happened, travel was the first thing that got affected, the travel industry. And so, that wasn't a success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she was like, amazing. Wow. I saw also in your LinkedIn profile that you do this. And so she started, like bringing up things in the past that I'm like, oh yeah, actually that's true. Like I had a travel agency before. I had a makeup studio. I also had a buy and sell car shop when I was younger. But these are things that I don't really pay attention to because I'm just like in the present moment. And I was like, oh, she did her research. Like she looked at my profile before stepping in this call. I had a look at hers too, but there's not much in the LinkedIn profile. I figured she wasn't very active in this platform. She might be active in another platform, but I don't have any other social media except LinkedIn. So I did not get the chance to know more about her. And so, I was also very curious and interested to know her. So I started asking questions. We got really personal and really deep really quickly. Like we chatted for maybe 30, 40 minutes, but it feels like I've known this person for a while. You know what I mean? It's like when you meet someone for the first time, it was just boom. It's like there's this spark of like, oh, it's like this person is interesting. Like I want to know more about her. So, I want to believe that this is also the energy that she got from that conversation last night, because it's what I still feel even as I speak now, one day after. And so the conversation went well. She was a natural. It was flowing. There was equal amounts of listening and talking and curiosity. And, you feel it when someone's really curious and really want to know more about you. You feel it. And so I ended that call feeling like, oh, I'm really excited to get to know her more, knowing that she will be in Madrid, in Spain, in a few months. I'm like really looking forward to meeting her in person and maybe having a coffee with her. But after all of that positive, how do you say? Like all of that giggly, bubbly feeling, that that resistance came back. That what's that? And I was like, okay, wait. Let me pause here a little bit, and I want to understand why I'm feeling this way. So I started to kind of backtrack a little bit in the conversation when I first started to feel this resistance in my body. And it was when she asked the question, how long have you been an entrepreneur? And I stayed in that moment for a while and just really kind of sensing in my body what exactly I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. And I think it's got to do with the word entrepreneur. And now as I'm reflecting and as I'm talking out loud, I'm realizing what it is, because it's something that I see often in coaches. Whenever I have conversations with them, they would say like, but I'm not really a coach. I'm not yet certified, or I did not train really. I just do this. I ask questions and this is what we do. From my perspective, I can see like they are coaching, they are coaches, but they don't see themselves yet as coaches. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me yesterday in that conversation. I'm like, I don't associate with the word entrepreneur. And I'm like, okay, this is an interesting theme to dive into, because what's there? Like, what's the resistance about? What's this feeling of like this association? What is it all about? And so, I was like, okay, entrepreneur, what does that even mean? I came to that thinking. I know that I'm moving in business. Business is something that I like, I do, I practice, I teach people, I coach people, I help people. But entrepreneurship, what is the difference, right? So I started obviously not Googling, but chat GPTing. Is that the new term we use? So I'm just going to read it out loud, right? So it says here, at its simplest level, business is about execution and stability, and entrepreneurship is about creation and growth. So when I first read that, I'm like, doesn't really make much difference, does it? I'm like, okay, no, I need to really dive in deeper, right? So I said, what is the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur? So it's when I started to, understand a little bit better, like, okay. The difference is often psychological, and it is about the mindset of the individual. right? A business owner would be someone who works in the business, right? For example, if they have a bakery or a bake shop, they also bake. If they are a hairdresser, or if they have a salon, they're usually also a hairdresser, right? And so in the entrepreneur, it's about working on the business, right? So it says here, the goal is to build systems so that the business runs without them, right? And I think the most important factor here that really got me like, oh, understand what it is a little bit more is the one that says here, let me just find it. Where is that? Hello, where are you? Okay, so here it says, for the business owner, the mindset is, I want to be my own boss. The entrepreneur, the mindset is, I want to change how things are working, right? And so if you look at it, I think it all boils down to intention, innovation, and the risk that you're taking, right? So I was like, okay, in that definition, then I can consider myself an entrepreneur. Well, why don't I feel like an entrepreneur? Why don't I associate with this word, right? And I'm like, what's that all about? Okay. So I started thinking and I'm like, oh, maybe because when I think of the word entrepreneur, I think of tech. I think of technology, right? I don't have technology. I don't have any plans whatsoever in the future of building an app or building whatever kind of technology. That's not where I'm going. And I'm like, maybe that's the reason why I don't see myself as an entrepreneur, because I'm not moving in the tech space. So I'm like, started asking again, ChatGPT, but could you consider yourself an entrepreneur even if you're not moving in the tech space? And basically, it all boils down to the answer is yes, right? Because entrepreneurship is about creating, it's about growing, it's about disrupting something, it's about doing something new that has not been maybe done before, it's about challenging the status quo, whether it's in tech or outside tech. So I'm like, okay, let me sit down and see how this feels now in my body. And I started saying, I am an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. I got crazy last night and I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying to sense into my body after challenging my mind, after seeking answers to my question, after finding some clarity around it. I was testing my body and I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. And it's like, okay, I didn't feel the same thing I felt last night. Okay, what's that about? And so this morning I shared with my husband. I was like, you know what? Last night there was this girl who asked me this question. How long have you been an entrepreneur? And I was like, and I told him, I felt this like resistance in my body. I didn't know if I was going to answer her question or address the thing I'm feeling, but I answered her question anyway. And my husband looked at me and he was like, don't you think you're an entrepreneur? And I'm like, I mean, now I'm trying to, I'm considering myself to be an entrepreneur. I consider myself a person who has a business, who loves all things business. I'm really interested in this, and I'm all about, economic growth and empowering people to have their own business. But I guess this is a word that I have to start getting comfortable with, that I have to start getting used to. And I'm sharing this right now because I found something, a syndrome that I know most of us already know, which is called imposter syndrome. And I'm like, I've been hearing it, a lot of creators on YouTube like talk about imposter syndrome. Some really kind of big players in the business who I follow talk about imposter syndrome. And even at that level, like, they're probably earning 1 million easily. They still feel an imposter in some way. Sometimes it shows up. And I was like, oh, this is what they mean. Like, this is what they mean. And like I said in the beginning, just I know so many coaches, really brilliant, kind, amazing, wonderful, talented, skilled humans who don't fully associate themselves as a coach. Like, if I start, telling them, coach, if I start introducing them to people and say, hey, this is coach, they'd be like, well, I'm not really a coach. I'm coaching, but I'm not certified. I don't have ICF accreditation or whatever kind of accreditation, right? And I feel like that's kind of the same thing. Like, there's imposter syndrome around it because I guess we're afraid to be seen as fraud. I guess we're afraid to be seen as someone pretending to be someone. But I think there is a huge, huge difference between our perception about ourselves versus the perception of others about us and vice versa. Right? Did you get that? I'm gonna say that again. I think there's a big difference between our perception of ourselves versus the perception of others towards us and vice versa. Okay, so let me give an example. So the lady that I met yesterday, she asked me, how long have you been an entrepreneur? Which means when she looked at my profile, my LinkedIn profile, the impressions she got or the perception she got is that I am an entrepreneur because she's probably seen I've built different businesses. She's probably seen I'm now in the online business and I am an entrepreneur, right? So that's what she saw. And she doesn't have any resistance whatsoever about the word entrepreneur. She understands what it is and what it is not. And so that's her understanding, and that's how she perceives me. But the issue is that I don't perceive myself as an entrepreneur because the word for me means someone who's innovating in tech. And I'm not an innovator in tech. And so I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. But that's my perception about myself. Like, that's my perception about the word entrepreneur and myself, right? It doesn't connect. But there's something about looking at the bigger picture, stepping back and really seeing facts versus feelings. You know what I mean? Realities versus resistance. Mental models and perceptions that we have about things. And so I'm coming in, I'm recording this episode really to encourage everyone right now who's feeling a little bit of an imposter syndrome, especially the coaches that I know who are still struggling to consider themselves as coach, still struggling to fully embody what it is to be a coach, still struggle to put the coach before their name, still struggle to offer their services as a coach, still struggle to find the words about the value that they deliver because they are moving away from this word, from associating themselves with this word. So this is an encouragement for all of us to step back a little bit, take a pause, and see things from a different perspective. And there are 3 ways that have been helpful for me, for example, with what happened to me yesterday, that I'd like to share with you, in the hopes that it might be helpful for you too, as you kind of reframe the way you look at things. So I like to play with perception, and there are three things that I'd like to play around with. One is the perception of time. All I cared about was what was happening now, what I'm doing now, right? I have this online coaching business, and it feels like this is what I'm all about because it's so present for me. It's what I do every day. I'm surrounded by coaches and I help them build their business. So, you know what I mean? It's like, I am here in this bubble in this moment in time. But when I had a conversation with my husband in the morning, he helped me realize through time that I have been building a business since when I was young. You know, he was like, so you don't think you are an entrepreneur? Like, when I met you, you already had your business. You had your travel agency, you had your makeup studio. And, you know, and he was like, you remember that when we were living here and you did this? So because of him, like, reflecting back to me what I was doing in the past, playing with perception with time, I was able to kind of widen my perspective, right? And that gave me a little bit of facts, oh, this is where I am right now. This is what I'm doing right now. Okay. What was I doing before? Boom. And before that, boom. And before that. So it's widening my perspective, right? It gives me that full view of what are the activities I have been doing in the past, right? And it gives me more information, more facts. So it challenges the way that I'm feeling, because now I have something to base it with. It's not entirely because I'm feeling. There is something in front. There's an evidence. There's proof, right? So it's proving that I am not a fraud in essence, because there is proof. And so that's one, perception with time. The second one is perception with space, right? So I'm going to give an example as a coach, right? A lot of the coaches that I know now really find it difficult to express the value that they are giving or that they are offering. And they don't fully associate themselves as a coach because of all of these certifications going on. You know, there's ICF certification, EMCC, AC. There's so many governing bodies at the moment that are certifying coaches. And that's great. I'm all for that, because, you know, I think there needs to be some regulation around coaching, because it's such a powerful experience that it can be used in a negative way. And so I think, you know, the coaching organizations are doing a good job when it comes to that. And so I'm all for that. What I'm saying is that it doesn't mean that if you don't have the certification, you cannot call yourself a coach. It doesn't mean that either, you know? And so I'm going to give an example. I was working with this lady who is a leadership coach, but she's really finding it difficult to call herself a leadership coach because she doesn't feel like she has been in a leadership position enough time, right? In her workplace. Like, she's in a leadership position, but there's more people sort of beyond her or above her, whatever that is, beyond or above her, that are more senior than her. And that's why she's feeling like she's not fit enough to be called a leadership coach. But then when we start playing with perception of space, and this is what I mean, let's imagine for a moment your role as a leader in your home. How is your leadership coaching embodied in your home? So she has 2 kids and she has a husband, and her 2 kids have school groups. So she's been leading different activities in those school groups, right? So that's one space. Another is the community that they're living in at the moment. She's leading women's groups, Christian women's circles in their communities. She's also leading that. So, you know, through the exercise and the practice of changing your perception in different spaces. So you're not only a leader in your workplace, you're also a leader in your house, you're also a leader in your community. What else do you need to see in order for you to feel like you are not a fraud to call yourself a leadership coach? So that has been helpful for her. So perception of time, perception of space. And I think what's more important here is the third one, which is perception of the language, of words, right? I told you in the beginning, the reason why I don't feel associated with the word entrepreneur is because I used to think, right? I used to think entrepreneur is a person who's innovating in tech, right? But that's not entirely true. It can be a person innovating inside and outside of tech, right? But I needed to kind of really learn the words that I'm using, the narrative that I'm associating with these words in order to understand that and challenge that. So for coaches, what does it mean to be a coach, right? A lot of people think to call yourself a coach, you need to have a badge, you need to have a proper training. Sure, you probably need all those, but it doesn't mean that you cannot call yourself that. It doesn't mean that you cannot call yourself a coach if you don't have XYZ, right? So that's not entirely true. Also, when I say perception of words, it's also what I think about entrepreneur. The lady who I spoken to yesterday, what she thinks about the word entrepreneur is completely different, right? And so I'm saying you will also learn what these words really mean by engaging with other people. So with coach, other people think about coach differently, while others think about coach differently. And so it allows you to have that different understanding from different perspectives from the way they use the words, right? So that's playing with perception of time, playing with perception of, what was the second one? Space, the different spaces that you're moving in. And the third is a play with perception on words or language or narrative. So by spending time on these three things, time, space, words, you will notice that you will suddenly start to realize, oh yeah, maybe I was thinking that way. Oh yeah, maybe I was thinking that. Oh, maybe I need to change. Like this exercise of asking yourself this question, going deep, exploring, challenging, it allows you to remove whatever it is that is stopping you from being the coach, being the entrepreneur, being the leader. It removes that imposter syndrome. And what's happening is that you slowly embody that. And you'll slowly embody what it means to be an entrepreneur. You slowly embody what it means to be a coach. You slowly embody what it means to be a leader, whether you are at work, whether you are at home, in your community. And so that's where the transformation begins. And like in any transformation, super, super, super important to have community with you. People who support you, encourage you, enlighten you, and even challenge you. So if you have the resources and the opportunity to be in a community or to even start a community, I highly, highly, highly recommend you to do so, because it's when you learn more about yourself, when you are in communion with other people. If it weren't for the call that I had yesterday with this lady, I would not know or be aware that I have this resistance around the word entrepreneur. And that's because I am intentionally being and spending time to be in a community. And I know there's so many communities out there, and sometimes it can get messy and sometimes it can get confusing. So if you are a coach, a consultant, a trainer, a facilitator, an educator who's moving in the sustainability and impact space, meaning if your work is all about bettering the world that we live in, we have a free global learning community called The Garden. Go to deeplyrooted.space/the garden. That's deeplyrooted bit.space/thegarden. You're very much welcome to come, to join, to be in community with us. We have different gatherings that we do every week, and it's online. It's all online for now. It's where you'll meet people from all over the world who are also building their business in good soil. And one of the main things that we do is support one another and help one another to not feel like imposters, to not have that imposter syndrome. So I'm ending this episode with that reflection. I hope you take time today or in the next couple of days to play with perceptions of time, space, and words. If you've been feeling this imposter syndrome, if you've been feeling like you don't associate with some words and you don't feel enough, or you don't feel like you're the person that you are, I highly, 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 highly encourage you to do it. It will help you a lot. It will give you a different perspective of things, and it will catalyze your transformation above all else. And I think as coaches, we walk the talk. The transformation is not just something we offer to people, but also something that we go through ourselves for our own development, for our own continuous personal and professional development. And before you leave, I just want to take a few minutes right now to pray for you. Father, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity that we can learn more about imposter syndrome. We can learn more about some of the things, some of the beliefs that could potentially be holding us back. Thank you, Lord, for this person listening right now to this episode. Lord, may you enlighten their minds, open their hearts, and allow them to see clearly, to see who they are, to see what they can bring and offer to this world. Father, remove any resistance, any hesitation, any false, unhelpful, limiting beliefs that are stopping them from stepping into their full potential. Father, help us walk our talk. Help us go through the process of personal transformation so that we may also guide others in their transformation. Father, thank you for the gift of community. Surround us, Lord, with people who encourage us, uplift us. And may you guide us in the next couple of days as we get into a space of reflection. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of community. Speak to this person, Lord. Be with them today and in the next days. In Jesus' name, Lord, I pray. Amen. Thank you for listening, friend. I'll see you again in the next episode. Ciao for now.